Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the meeting of the Georges River Local Planning Panel for the 16th of March 2023. My name is Sue Francis and I'm the chair of this panel. And the panel is currently streaming from the council offices in McMahon Street, Hurstville. The panel members who make up the panel today are Nicholas Skelton, Michael Levy, and Eric Sellers. We at the panel been appointed by the Minister to determine this and determine specified development applications under the Act. And we have one matter on the agenda today. Before we get started, Georges River Local Planning Panel acknowledges the Begal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of all the lands, waters and sky in the Georges River area. We pay respects to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who live, work and meet on these lands. Now, as you might have understood, we are live streaming, so everything we say and do is on the net. So please be nice to each other, us and everyone. We have 5 registered speakers. Now, I've got 5. Well, no, it says we've got 5, but I've only got 4.
Sorry, there were 5 registered, but one didn't want to
My
speak.
apologies. My both 4. So I think you're all for the applicant, aren't you? So I've got Van Janeski, Rod Logan, Stephen Walters, and Behal Hijazi. Close enough. Thank you. So we have the assessment report. You know, we've been out to the site. We've had a look in the heat. Just for clarity and on record, we have disclosures of pecuniary interest, and I received those, and there are none, and they're all signed, so they'll be available should anyone wish to see them. So we only have one item. We only have us. You're all here. We're here to listen to your concerns in relation to the report. We will no doubt have lots of questions. You will no doubt have some issues you want us to listen to and address. We will no doubt have questions about all of the above. So I think on that basis, let's get going. Now, normally it's a 3-minute talking. There's only us, so let's do what we need to do. I'm not going to be worried too much about the time, but we'll try and keep it short. So is there going to be one nominated speaker, or do you all want to speak? Well, I'm looking at Rod because it's normally the planner. The engineer, the architect, yeah, and the owner. Get it? Yep. Okay. I'm presuming you might want to start, Rod. Oh, your stuff. Okay. Yes, absolutely. Off you go.
Good afternoon, Chair and panel. We are here before the panel speaking on behalf of the owners who have endured over 400 days and for council town planners on this DA. We're here to outline that our intent throughout those 400 days has been to work with council and achieve a positive outcome for all. I've worked with people in this building for over 25 years, and that has been our intent with any DA. However, we feel that we're working on achieving a favourable outcome for the owners just prior to Christmas, and that somewhere between the 3rd and 4th planners, information and lines of communication have been lost, and we're here now defending a scheme that is somehow misrepresented in this report presented to the panel. We feel several of the matters were cleared by earlier planners, and other issues have been raised late that were never contentious throughout the 400-day period. We would hope that by Liam and his team, the process today allows us an opportunity to resolve any presented matters. We've made a detailed submission for the Secretary earlier this week, and the outlines of our concerns were with the inaccuracies and misinterpretations in the report, namely calculations of FSR and landscape, earthworks, acid sulfate soils affecting the lowering of the water table, accuracy of foreshore area assessments, and parking and access matters. It should be noted that our office has also designed the adjoining property at 183 Queens Road, which essentially observes identical site conditions and orientations as the subject site. The site fronts a dangerous blind corner at the southern end of Queens Road that is obscured in both directions, north and south, by a significant rock formation directly across the road from the subject site. With the narrow frontage and the above conditions, parking and access into and out of the property was the primary design driver in response to the streetscape. The wider nature of the proposed driveway allows for a vehicle to safely pull in and out of the driveway on a shallow angle to potentially avoid dangerous and unsighted traffic. This was effectively achieved at 183 Queens Road, and again is proposed at 185 Queens Road. The report states that the garage and zero setbacks contribute to bulk and scale to the streetscape. However, other garage forms are prevalent along this part of the roadway, all with zero or near zero setbacks along the footway. Furthermore, the site currently has an existing 6 metre wide driveway and a 1.8 metre wall to the street frontage currently existing on the northern boundary. However, the report stipulates that the proposed driveway at 6 metres and the nil setback to the northern boundary are stated for grounds for rejecting the current design. The proposed design essentially replicates in form what is currently now located on the site. Currently on site, we observe an older garage wing that rests on the street and side boundaries. A larger existing rear footprint that forms the main house at the water edge, and a large existing landscape private open space that rests in between these forms. The only point of difference being proposed with the new home is a circulation link that provides better amenity linking the garage and the rear main house. The other main point of difference that should be noted is the proposed rear main house has been positioned 3 metres back from the current home on site, away from the water on the southern boundary, and has been twisted, allowing the neighbouring property at 187 to gain new water views to the north via a field of view gain of 30 to 33 degrees. The proposed building has been carefully situated on the site so as to not block views to any of the neighbouring dwellings. View analysis studies were conducted, which further highlighted the minimal impact of the proposal. It should also be noted that the height of the new building observes an RL 90 mils lower than the maximum height of the current building there on site now. Furthermore, the maximum height of the rear of the main part of the new house sits only at 7.8 metres in height, some 1.2 metres under the allowable 9 metres under the LEP. This was a conscious decision to maintain the modest building height so as to best accommodate solar access to that southern neighbour. The report states that this was achieved. The careful positioning of the building footprint also extends to the nature in which the private open space area to the courtyard on the north has been positioned. The proposed courtyard has been positioned directly in alignment and opposite the private open space of 183 Queens Road. This has allowed for the open corridor between the houses to be amplified and allows positive solar gains and better privacy and separation between the properties. This careful alignment to the neighbouring structure to the north further extends down into the lower level of the undercroft areas. Both dwellings have been structurally aligned at this point so as to best provide uniform foundations across the rock shelf. We were on site and engaged to inspect the neighbouring property at 183 during that construction and build. We also have the engineer Steve Waters from LMW Design Group that's designed and oversaw the construction of that house next door. He's been consulted from the outset on this design at 185 due to the unstable nature of the rear of 185. The report focuses on the earthworks and extent of excavation of the undercroft area, so I'd like to call on Steve to outline the nature of the
She needs to ask a question because you've raised some of the issues.
Yep.
You talked about the height and the compliance with the height. We didn't notice the lift overrun.
the lift run.
Mm.
It's going up to the top floor, and it's just
There's no overrun?
there's only a 300 mil overrun, I assume, after the 2100. So we've got a ceiling of about, I mean,
I'm only asking in the context of compliance.
it's maintained within the
So the-
height of the ceiling.
So it's not exceeding the roof of the.
No,
Okay.
it maintains the parapet height for the rest of that top portion of the building.
Okay. So there's
Yep,
no overrun beyond the roof that's shown maximum RO.
Yep, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Look, I was the engineer on way 183, so I've got a lot of experience with the groundworks around that area. The geotech report that was undertaken on 185 has brought about and looked at the fractured nature of the floaters towards the water side of the block. The geotech report brought up that the bedrock is between 1.4 to 1.8 metres below the ground level, and the experience with the area, there's a lot of floaters or lenses of sandstone separated by clay. This has resulted in the existing building having settlement problems on the site. Even if we didn't have as extensive undercrop area as we do on the proposed development, we would have to be digging to make sure we break through those lenses to achieve a sound foundations.
Excuse me, Sue, if you could just turn your microphone.
Sorry,
Thank you.
I said, I think the panel accepts that there might be the need to replace, reconstruct retaining walls, etc. I think one of the things we want to explore is the issue of the structures forward of the existing retaining walls and the application of the foreshore building line controls under whatever it is, 6.4, and whether they are prohibitions or development standards.
Exactly. Thanks for the lead in on that one. But I'd first of all like to again just reiterate the length of time that this process has been through. I was asked to assist. I didn't prepare the original statement, but was asked to assist after exhibition, and council indicated the need for a view loss assessment and a 4.6 to deal with the foreshore building line issue. Which was where I started involvement in this project. At that meeting with the officers involved, it was the third officer, the assessing officer, and one of the supervisors. The need for the 4.6 was identified as being a procedural matter, really. You know, there's provisions there that 6.4 says you really don't. This is not a prohibition on development if you're the provision doesn't apply if you're rebuilding existing building, which is what we were proposed to do. But apparently there's been some legal advice that a 4.6 was necessary. But we're advised at that meeting that as long as 4.6 addressed the issues that it needed to, that it was more a procedural assessment. From my reading of that assessment report, there seems to be I don't know if it's an inaccuracy in how it's been interpreted in terms of the elements that council maintains are forward of the foreshore building line. The building itself is well behind the existing building, and I doubt that that's in dispute. But it then goes on to state that the swimming pool and terrace elements are forward of the existing building. They, in my reading of the provision, are elements that are required to be addressed in 6.4. They are permitted within the foreshore building line. You know, council's DCP has a specific suite of controls for swimming pools between the foreshore building line and mean high water mark, which is an accommodation of that form of development in that area, in my mind. So, I fail to see that having those elements forward of the foreshore building line is anyway triggers the need for assessment under 6.4. So I was a bit taken aback to have that stated as a ground for rejection of the 4.6 that hadn't been addressed.
Can I just clarify, because 6.4, it's a standard construction of the foreshore building line controls, talks about you can retain the alignment of an existing building if it is forward of the foreshore building line, but you can't go beyond the alignment of the existing building if it is forward of the foreshore building line.
Yep.
So given you have a house on the site that is already forward of the foreshore building line, one presumes you have to maintain, this control says you have to retain the alignment of that existing building. Now, buildings are more than just the house. Buildings are structures. So the question I have relates also to the
We're talking about the footprint of the building,
Well,
but
it's the bill, well, it doesn't, I'm talking about not worried about the DCP, I'm talking about the LEP, the development, the standard or the provision, because I don't know whether it is a standard. My question mark is whether it's a prohibition and whether you can actually apply 4.6. I know 4.6 isn't specifically excluded from this clause, but that's my question. And the other thing is, whilst I think there is an element of a terrace, an elevated terrace that goes beyond the alignment of the existing building, the question mark I have is the rebuilding, constructing of the new retaining walls is forward, if I read the plans correctly, of the existing retaining walls, if that's what we'll call them, rock face, reinforced with concrete chop, is they're forward with that, and that's again something that's not anticipated by this clause. Have I got that? Yeah. So that's our query at the moment. So there's a permissibility issue, question mark I should say, to us, and then there's a merit issue as to if it is 4.6able, has that been properly addressed in the clause 4.6 and covered the appropriate objectives and covered all the elements that are forward of the portal working.
One of the questions there was went on 6.4.3. I think the word is council must. That's a little bit different to what all others.
Excuse me, Michael, could you just put your microphone on, please? Thank you.
Sorry, did you hear that?
okay now, thanks.
So, my apologies. Yeah, 6.4.3, I think that the wording's along the lines of council must not. It's worded quite differently to the way that you normally find development standards worded.
It said development consent must not be granted for development on land, which is clause 5.
Yeah.
Alteration, demolition, or rebuilding of existing building. It's a footprint of the building.
Excuse me, Sue, your microphone.
Sorry, if the footprint of the building does not extend further than the footprint of the existing building.
That's right.
So, I mean, this is our question mark. I don't know the answer. I had a view, but I don't know the actual answer. And I'm assuming you don't have any legal advice, and I don't think council has.
Our view is the footprint of the existing building is the existing building, the residence, where that's quite clear. It does then say, but you can, this clause applies except for swimming pools.
I'm not worried about swimming pool. I'm not talking about swimming pool.
And the terrace, is that?
No, it doesn't say terrace.
That's the element that is referenced.
It's an elevated terrace. It's balcony.
Yes.
It's a balcony. And it projects forward of the existing building.
Is it a footprint?
That's not in the footprint of the building.
It's not a
Balconies have never been.
Oh, no, this is where I think I might have disagree with
That's
you.
well,
Yes. Yeah.
similarly to a front
Yeah.
building line on a residence. A projecting balcony is not the building line.
Well, I think we might have to disagree on that one. Disagree on that one.
In my experience, a balcony element on the waterfront is not building line.
Yeah, well, I have alternate experience, but I think the more important question here is the prohibition question, and then the retaining walls, because they are building structure building, and they are part of the building on the site. It's a grey area, I get. It's not black and white, so I get that, but it does have some issues. And then there's whether the 4.6, assuming a 4.6 can be dealt with, has addressed the objectives of the standards of the CLP.
Actually, well, no. When we were discussing it was with the officers originally, there was no contention that they were elements that had to be addressed in the 4.6. From their view of the plans, the building that we're proposing was well behind the existing building footprint, and they were satisfied with that, and they asked us to produce 4.6 as a procedural matter to do with that variation, which we proceeded to prepare, and that was lodged months ago.
No, I appreciate the frustration, because I think we're all in the same frustration. There are just not enough planners around, and two of the people that were do this application.
Sure, but there had been ongoing discussions about this matter for some time. Then it was very abruptly that was abandoned, and this report was produced in a week.
Yeah, and I think this panel's raised
No
questions.
opportunity.
The council hasn't raised either.
Look, it's a difficult site, so I know, and there's a lot of issues, even with the side area, which I think we're seeking a redefinition of something now because of the building. It looks like it might, the map show that it might actually be beyond the site area. Like it's all.
I think there are a couple of issues with this. There's potentially a procedural statutory issue that we've got to get an answer on. Then there are the merit issues and some of the issues that have been raised here. There's the issue of the 4.6 is, I said one of the questions was the lift overrun. You've answered that. Accept that. It's not going over. That's fine. No 4.6 needed for height. The other issue is the GFA. Now, I know you have a difference of opinion, and the panel might have a difference of opinion too. We've looked at the plans, and I think there's still a different version of the calculation. For example, the lift hasn't been included in
The
it.
difficulty for us is we couldn't gauge what was being assessed as floor area in the report. It was, and the words seemed to indicate areas were being counted that really shouldn't be. It just caused a lot of
Well, on that, the lift, gets counted on one of the levels.
And it has.
Excuse me, could you turn the microphone on, please? Sorry.
For instance, the lift gets counted on one of the levels. Do you agree with that?
Generally, I'd say the lift is being taken over the 3 floors is how I've.
Yes, but it gets counted on one of the levels only.
That's it.
Yeah. On your plans, that's not counted on any level, and that would tip it over the limit. Just as an example.
So if we agree with everything else, that bit will knock it over and require the 4.6 for that.
Yeah, well, I don't know what the 35 square metres in the Undercroft is, and unknown to
As I
me
said,
what was taken.
if we were to say we don't think the Undercroft is GFA, if we were to say we think your stairs have been calculated properly, and
On the lift, sorry, it's the lift
it's
section.
just the lift,
On 3.
So you don't count it on any level.
the plans don't count it on any level.
But the circular stair, it says it in the report's been counted on.
That's correct.
Yes, fine.
But I mean, that in itself will counter the lift issue that you outlined.
Well, it may well be. It's the right figure.
Yeah.
It's the right figure.
We at 370 days, we're close,
No.
and then all of a sudden that all just dropped off.
I want to
There was
I want to get
coordination.
clarity, and I want to fix it.
Yep.
And we want to have the position that the panel has in terms of what is GFA.
Wish we had that clear days ago. So we would have accepted any
in
strategy.
black and white,
We
I
would have
accept
gone,
it's
yeah,
not black and white.
100%.
But
So-
our view, we had a discussion about this, is we wouldn't count the Undercroft as GFA. Jump in, guys. We count the stairs, bar for 1,
As you've done.
as you've
Okay.
done.
Yep.
You've
Yep.
done that right.
Okay.
But you haven't counted, you haven't put in the lift. And we thought it was then just that lift that would put you over. But we don't know for a fact because it needs to be dealt with. And then you need a 4.6 to deal with.
So we haven't come up with a number.
No.
But that would get you over the limit, which presents us with a problem.
Okay.
If you've got your plans here, you may be able to add.
Brought to our attention, we probably would have resolved.
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, it's our view and it's not been raised.
You're independent council.
Yeah,
Hey.
as you know.
We only have to be happy that it's over or under. And get that one thing seems to be over. So that's that issue.
Yeah.
If I could just go back to the lift overrun, the floor to ceiling height in that upper level is 2.5 metres.
Yep.
And then the thickness of the roof slab is 280 mil.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering where the powering mechanism for the lift goes. I mean, look, if it required a small overrun, look, I don't think that would be an issue, but I just can't see how this lift is going to be driven.
Can I answer?
Yeah, Steve.
Yeah. Look, the modern lifts now are done on an inertia wheel that runs beside the car. So it's not like the old days where you had the overhead sheet platforms or you had the winches up the top as much, right? The height over the lift overrun over the lift is a lot of times there for the maintenance of the lift and to place the lift on the hook. But yeah, a lot of the modern lifts, and depending on the make, you've got a lot of them only taking 100 mil sump and only taking, a couple of 100 mils over the top. And lift shaft lids, because I design them all the time, normally I can get squeezed down to 150 mils if I have to, So with
This side.
well, no, that's good. And that is dependent on the lift manufacturer. From every lift manufacturer has got different specifications, because once you lock in the plans, you're locked
We've been doing this a very, very long time. We put lifts in a lot of buildings, all of us, but we all know it depends which one you choose.
Yes.
But you have to choose one before you get your approval if you are going to breach the height as a consequence.
Yeah.
So,
And if the slab is 280 mil thick, so are you saying that half of that would actually be lift overrun and then it's a narrower bit of
Well,
concrete
they can have a bit more of the lift. They can use some of that space, but it depends whether it's the lift mechanism. But they don't have a lot of lift mechanisms in the roof anymore to run them. It's normally run the rail, and they've got a drum that inertia drums that goes up and down.
If we were to make a condition that the lift overrun cannot be more than 160 millimetres, would that be a problem?
I don't think so. With the lift in the one outside, the lift's not 2,500 inside that actual cabin. We've got plenty of play between a 2,100 door and that 2,500 ceiling that you're quoting. There's 400 mil there of tolerance for an engineer to design that. So 160 we ample.
Excuse me for interjecting, but we can provide, Bill's just said we can provide the detail of the lift, so we know exactly, you could specify on the plan.
I think we're going to have a few things we need to get resolved. We go.
You might want to talk it one day.
That's one of the things we might need to resolve. So I would say it's not fatal at this point in time. So, perhaps better if we actually ask a question.
Sure.
Yes. Do you have any issues about landscaping and driveway? Yep.
The street frontage along there is devoid of trees. It's not desirable for the public walking along or whatever. There's quite a lot of concrete. The frontage, I accept the frontage of this property is 10 metres just over. It's not a lot, but you do have a double driveway. Do you need a double driveway, or can we have more planting on a council street?
Look, I think we could probably support our position with a traffic engineer looking at just the safety issue at that point on that road, which is almost unique. Like along there, it is all pretty cluttered, the general streetscape, but where that is on that bend with the rock face right up on the eastern side, there's no view around it. It's double lines. You almost have to move onto the other side of the road to get into the site. And just having that double width driveway makes it a lot safer, and it is there now. There is potential tree planting opportunity at the front of the site. Yeah, but it is, unfortunately, that's that, and it is just that small sweep of the street. The rest of the street has opportunities for trees, but it's just really tight there. And I'm sure if we, like the engineers have looked at it, apparently the report said it went to engineers and no one raised that as an issue. No, it's a streetscape and landscape issue. But I think if we tried to reduce there would be issues from a safety access into the site perspective if we narrowed that up significantly.
If we're not resolved today, one way or another, that may be another thing you might want to look at. And with the view of, we would prefer more planting space on the council strip.
So that'd be tree planting on council's reserve is,
More landscaping, less concrete, whichever way.
That could be also in your frontage, because you've got a double crossover. I know there are double crossovers. I know it's an existing double crossover, but you've got double, and it's devoid of any greenery.
Yeah, sorry, like again, I think we've got ample space to, massage that and make it happen. Yeah.
And the adjoining property, we noted when we were there, it might be what you were going to say. Go on, you say.
One of the features of 183 that I think works well is that slightly angled alignment of the carport. I think just reduces its impact. But is there a reason why, I guess, didn't sort of follow a similar alignment?
I think that property or that design was based on that each is based on the northern boundary line. So it's probably square with that boundary that we don't read obviously only on a plan, but it's perpendicular to that eastern boundary. So that's why you get that apparent sort of diagonal. But yeah, we could definitely look at reducing the built up nature of that front of house, and reduce some of the building elements and increase some of the soft.
In the
soften it up.
183, it is set back a little bit further from the boundary on that side, and again, I think it works really well. But if you were to continue something, take going from the same alignment then to the front corner on this side, it's going to follow the same line as your front balcony, and could just sort of reduce some of those streetscape impacts of the car.
Yeah, no, we're happy to look at all that.
Yeah, on that street frontage, you could have a low garden bed within the property. It's not an area you can use for anything else anyway. So
That can present
greatly
the street.
increase the street space.
Yep.
The other issue that one of the council raised in their report was the length of the boundary to the northern boundary. Now, I know, having been out there, that it adjoins number 183 and which is a carport, but it is quite a solid structure. Is there a scope? Oh, sorry, I know there's scope. How would you feel to opening that structure up, or to even if it's highlighted openings, still making it structurally sound, but some highlighted openings at the high level in the carport part of the structure or the wall?
Yeah, I know where you're coming from. Again, we've tried to really cramp that carport down for that same reason that you're outlining. So
Yeah. I'm just doing holes as opposed to doing anything else.
And it doesn't need to replicate what's next door. It is just large, and so whether or not there was even an opportunity for an opening in that sort of concrete side wall, even at a higher level,
I know
it's some potential to just break it up a bit.
I mean, it's an open carport, so it's not a security issue. It's already open. It's just at the top level.
Yeah, we could look at a design element and break that sort of, the monotonous, bulky sort of
That's the point.
thin wall. Yeah, definitely. We can look at the same way that the larger buildings are sort of, they get treated with the sidewall treatments. We can look at something of that vein.
You mentioned viewing from the public space, how people walking along the street will be able to glimpse views of the water, and you were talking about using the open space from the adjacent property, which is 153 or something or other, and making that gap bigger to view through there. My recollection is that there's a masonry wall at the frontage, and it's at a height that you can't quite glimpse over. So how was that going to work if you can't see over the top of the wall?
You're referring to the building that was on the southern side, the red brick property. Is that what you're referring to?
I thought it was the other side.
Yeah, 183.
183.
The wall with some plant machinery up in that.
It's hard up against the existing garage on site now on 185.
Which obstructs the view from the public space of the foreshore. But
They
that's
both-
where you are
They both
talking
do.
about having
Oh no, I was referring to the way that we've turned the building around in the rear of the property. It was referring to the 187. We've actually gained a massive view gain on that property next door on the southern side. That's the only views I was referring to. Sorry. So that the new building's pulled back 3 meters from the existing footprint. So down that little gate that he's probably went in, the new building is 3 meters back, and the building on the left hand side gains like a good 33 or 34 degrees angle out to the northwest.
Okay.
So that's what I was referring to. Sorry.
So did we get an answer to that prohibition on the did we get anywhere with that?
I don't think either of us can actually categorically say one way or another, and we might need to seek some clarity on that. I think.
Is that where we got to? Sorry.
I think that's where we're at. I mean, I'm
Did you have anything to say about that prohibition issue?
Well,
thinks the
from
development centre.
my perspective, it's not prohibited. The officer's position seems to be that it is. So we're talking about the balcony edges, whether or not the building line, foreshore building line, is taken to the building edge or to a balcony that projects into it. That's what we're talking about.
The
Retaining
it
walls.
says must not be granted. Council must not grant the permission.
If the footprint. if
Sorry,
we're
you
talking
press your
about what's the
microphone.
definition of-
Yeah, there's two aspects here, I think. One is the question that you're raising, Slogan, which is
It's
if it's no, he's saying if it's the footprint of the building, i.e. the walls of the building, ignoring the balconies that go over,
Yep.
is one question mark. The other is whether it is the building, the house, or any building on the site, which would pick up the retaining walls, and all the other structures which we know are excluded. Yeah. So
doesn't
and,
have a footprint.
and so then if it's either a development standard which has to pick up all those issues, or it's a prohibition and you can't. It then just means you have to make sure it's all in the alignment of the existing building.
So
That's
I'd be surprised if council hasn't dealt with this issue before in the past.
I would be surprised, but I haven't got a clear answer.
And they're going to be dealing with it again in the future. Perhaps it's their obligation to clarify the legal positions.
just wanted to give you an opportunity to comment on that before we decide. That's all.
Well, I would never have interpreted it in my time, and I've sat in council being the person responsible for the decision making, and I've never come across that interpretation.
Okay, I think I understand your stance on that now. And the terrace, we've got a disagreement on whether
Well,
terrace is included. I think
The
that
reference to terrace from online was something that was at ground level, not a balcony, a projecting balcony. Now, balconies aren't included in site cover in most definitions. Things like that, there just seems to be a lot of confusion about what's meant to be included. And I think what got me going was the inclusion of I thought the swimming pool was included as an element that was.
No, we're not
existing building.
raising
But
the
that's
issue.
what the report
We're not raising the issue of the
references.
swimming pool.
So it just was a bit of a red flag to, what sort of interpretations, how competent.
But certainly the construction of this foreshore building line is the same as other constructions in other LEPs, and it is a prohibition. So that's where I'm coming from. But
I understand your opinion on that now. Thank you. So we'll have a discussion on that.
Aaron, do you have any questions, clarifications? More, Michael? Anything else that you wanted to raise?
Excuse me, can we I'll just raise that as a topic. So if we're going back to try and resolve things, there's a couple of other issues that were raised in the report. It's just a matter of whether we need to also be attending to those, or they're just going to be thrown back at us
What were those?
as grounds for refusal that are a little bit dubious in my mind.
That's a solve at all.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to my colleagues.
No, we haven't talked about it.
Yes.
So,
But
If I may.
yeah.
There are two elements to that trigger the action of that provision, which needs to be some extended work. and it needs to lower the water table by more than a metre on the adjacent class land. Now, the report references that there are class 5 acid sulphate soils on the site, which there's no such thing. But the fact of our work having the capacity to lower the water table in the adjoining river is, and that would be the thing that triggered the need for us to gain consent under that provision. And that is just not.
Okay, I might be able to help you there. The panel are not in agreement with council. So council may still press that point, but we won't be. Was there anything else?
Just that some of the design consideration, design excellence, there's a reference to the excavation being an element that somehow didn't satisfy an assessment of the design excellence provisions, where I can't see anywhere that it will give any credibility to that aspect of the design being taken into consideration.
I think we're aware of the nature of the built form in that area, and it's not inconsistent with the built form as a generality.
And I think too, there have been no questions from the panel to you on that or the acid sulphate spoils.
Anything else?
No.
Silence is golden. Anything else that was in there?
Sorry,
Yep.
can I just say something? We're obviously trying to build our dream home. We've got a young family of 5, and this discussion that we're having now is probably the best discussion that we've had in 400 plus days dealing with council. So I just wanted to thank you all for being able to discuss and ask questions and backwards and forwards in relation to our family home, because it's the best fit or the most engaging conversation that we've had in the last year and a half. So
I understand the frustration with the process. I understand the frustration of the lack of resources that all councils have, and and I think the panel probably takes the view as a consequence of all of that, that if we can address some of these issues and solve them, I'm not saying it's going one way or another, because there are some things that would have to happen if one decision happens versus another decision. But I think there is a way forward, and let's just find out what it is. And I'm happy to keep the dialogue happening, and we'll see what we do. But I think we're looking to facilitating what needs to happen, but it might require some further information and clarification of certain things. And that will come back to us.
and I appreciate that, and I'm sure the rest of the guys do, that we're having this open discussion, which is helpful.
Fabulous site.
Yeah.
It's not an easy site to develop,
Yeah,
but it's when you get to the end of that pathway and you see that water, it is rather spectacular. So,
that's the end
but on a hot day, probably not as good as it. Okay, if there's no more questions, thank you very much. We'll make a decision and it'll be on the website as soon as it's ready.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.